Thank you for watching this demo of Dela Identity Exposure Manager platform. I would like to start with what are the major problems and challenges that we see across the board working with hundreds of companies in different industries and different countries. We call it Big Five because they are repeating themselves in different patterns across the board. And I would like you to have a think about it and see whether these are the case in your environment. Let's get started with vulnerable identity hygiene. When it comes to identity hygiene, there are three main issues. The first one is about privilege creep and poor role hygiene, where, as an example, if you are an IT manager today and let's say tomorrow you are being promoted to CEO role, that doesn't mean that your privileges and all of the access that you had should move in your new role as a CEO, although you had all of those critical accesses. The second one, which is the biggest one, is misconfigurations and weak controls, which can cause a lot of problems. And ultimately, it's about JML or joiner, mover, leaver, lifecycle management, where if you got a lot of contractors or you have a lot of accounts that coming in and they have to be decommissioned, that process in managing these accounts could become problematic. The second big issue that we see is around identity intelligence, where either there is not enough visibility and telemetry on what's been leaked in terms of accounts, credentials, or at the same time, in terms of alert fatigue and burnout within the team who are responding, where obviously whatever been leaked is out there, it doesn't go anywhere. The team goes and fix it, but tomorrow when they scan, it shows up. And during the time, it can cause fatigue. We may miss accounts that hasn't been actioned. The biggest challenge that we see is long time to remediate. So the question is, how long does it take in your environment from detection phase to fixing the issue? And you're talking across the board, not different severities, whether it's medium, high, or critical severity. We want to understand how long does it take, and we want to minimize it as much as possible. That the slow remediation is a massive problem. And of course, it is going hand in hand with limited skill resources that is contributing into the whole slowness of the remediation process. The other problem that we see is around disaster recovery. And how long does it take for us, if an incident, whether it's malicious or it's been a misconfiguration or whatever is the reason behind it, to get back to normal operation? There are limitations here again in terms of the skills and incident response processes and tools. Also, the complexity of the environment when there is older versions of Active Directory, hybrid models, so on and so forth. And lastly, it's about threat detection. So how much visibility do you have in terms of detecting attacks as it happens and respond to them? What you see on a screen here is what we call breach likelihood assessment. This is the first step, because what we want to do and we want to enable our clients with is to understand where they are standing as we speak right now with regards to their identity security. So the system integrates with your Entra ID and Active Directory, and in your environment, it captures the data and it feeds it into an algorithm to come up with an index where you can easily discuss with your board or executive team with regards to getting funding and budget approvals. It will check authentication hygiene, password and credential risk, privilege and account exposures, external access risk, app consent and token risk, and security defaults, along with conditional access. These are all the areas that it assesses, and it will give some scoring in terms of how easy it is to exploit that certain area of assessment, what is the impact, and ultimately what is the exposure in that area. Obviously, in this tenant, it's our test environment, and I fixed most of the things, so the score is low. And I'm really hoping that you have a similar sets of numbers and scoring in your tenant as well. If you scroll down a little, we have the dashboard, and this is the main dashboard with different categories, where in each of these categories we have different use cases. These use cases are all mapped to MITRE ATT&CK, so we can understand based on the rules that we defined and based on the AI assessment, each of these use cases assessing certain technique and tactics mapped to MITRE ATT&CK, so we see the results here. Obviously, we don't want these red bugs. We want to see all of them are green, but let's click on this use case to see what it is about. So we have our Entra ID tenants and domain controller tenants, but for now, we go to Dela test tenant, which is our Entra ID. This was the one that I clicked on. Okay, so it's about misconfigured tenant creation policies. Right away, you understand what is that about. Read a little bit more about what is this use case about. And then we have our MITRE reference page where you can click on easily and go to MITRE to read a little bit more about this problem. Technical details is showing last scan the system picked up, and we have the remediation solutions on how to fix it. But when it comes to fixing, all you need to do is to come here, click remediate, and when you confirm, yes, I would like to remediate, the system will go through a motion of re-scanning that specific area of concern or use case, misconfigured tenant creation policies in this case. And when it's done with the scanning, it shows what is the current risk that is detected based on the scan that just been executed, and what are the fixes that we're going to apply. At this point, you could pause, go get a change management approval, come back and click yes, or if that governance process is not in place or is different in your environment, you can just come here and say yes, and it will go ahead and fix the issue for you. Altogether, it takes less than a minute. Now let's go back to dashboard. There are all different types of use cases and categories of use cases. As you can see here, we have object and privilege configurations, defensive agent, forest and trust, authentication and permission, and each of them have their own sets of use cases as I just showed you. If we scroll down a little bit, we have a visualization of how many use cases passed or fail in each of those categories, and then further down some risk scoring and the trend on how your team or your identity security performing throughout the time, which is always helpful when it comes to security operations management, to have that trend and see the nice visual way. One of the main engines of the platform is identity intelligence. And identity intelligence is continuously checking dark web and leaked credentials and accounts out there in all different collections, or let's say bins, or wherever that as part of threat intelligence, these information are being dumped. And at the same time, it compares those information with the list of users that you have in your Entra ID or domain controller continuously, to understand if any of them are being leaked. If yes, and we have a match here, then you can easily either from here select them all and apply remediation, or you can come to each of the use cases, make sure the details are matching and it's the correct information, and then you either change the password or disable the account, or in some cases reapply MFA or revoke the token, or whatever is the fix for that case. Right? This makes intelligence operation from identity security perspective super simple and easy. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to threat detection is obviously the depth and breadth of the discoveries and detections that we have, but also applying the fixes and at the same time understanding, okay, we are under attack, how can we respond to it and how quick we can respond to it. And that's where Dela Security is doing a fantastic job in identifying attacks, but also to helping you to take action against them. So as an example, we have this exploitation here. Let's click on it. It's about possibly unauthorized account change. What is the tenant ID, user ID? What is the description? What are the details around it? And what is the impacted user that we need to respond to, timestamp, and what is the category. Then you can also take an action right here, so it doesn't take as long. The list could be here. All of these can be integrated with your SIEM. At this point that we speak, we are talking about Azure Sentinel, and yeah, you can have all of this information in your SIEM for correlation. The other major engine that we have in our Dela security platform is called identity hygiene. Identity hygiene is very important because if there is no underlying issue in your tenant, then the probability of attacks are decreasing, and also the playground is not there for the attackers. What identity hygiene does is going through all different aspects of identity hygiene in your Entra ID and domain controller, and understanding where are those misconfigurations or vulnerabilities, and we can easily again fix those issues here within a matter of minutes, if not seconds. So the user has permanent admin role or not expired after 8 hours of activation, which shows privileged account management is not in place. So the action would be enforce MFA, revoke token, change password, disable the account, whatever is the case for that specific issue. You can always filter everything, and it's all visualizing in terms of overall risk rating how the tenant is performing. And lastly, it's about disaster recovery. We said one of the biggest problems across the board is disaster recovery in companies, and how long does it take for the company to recover if there was a mistake or there was a successful attack. In this case, it takes hours. Just within a couple of hours, you can bring your domain controller back up and running. All you need to do is to download the latest or whichever backup that you want from the sets of backups that we automatically take in Dela Security. You download this file in your domain controller that's been impacted. Dela has its own agent running in your domain controller already. The agent will pick up the backup that you put on a disk, and you go through the sets of guidelines that is provided here, and you can easily bring that domain controller up and running. There are a whole bunch of other capabilities in this platform, but these are the main, I would say, engines as part of the platform. Very soon, they are planning to release complete M365 security, which includes all of the applications in as part of M365. And also, it will help companies to leverage privileged access management, irrespective of Microsoft licensing that you have.